for halacha a week and a half ago, and we talked about how we're not allowed to cook milk and meat together, we're not allowed to have benefit, and we're not allowed to eat milk and meat that were cooked together. So we spoke about how rabbinically the Chachamim said also it's a prohibition to cook kosher milk and kosher fowl, so you cannot cook chicken and milk. However, you're allowed to have benefit from it, so you can give not meat. You can give chicken and milk that was cooked together, not by a Jew, because cooking it is marasayan, because it looks like regular basar b'challah. But if it was already done, you go to the store, you want to buy dog food for Clifford, your friendly dog, and it's just chicken and milk. You're allowed to have benefit from it. You're allowed to give it to the dog. But regular basar b'challah, which would mean meat, kosher meat and kosher milk, you're not allowed to have benefit from it. Actually, has to be buried. If it's non-kosher species meat, then it's permissible. It's not b'challah. Then it wouldn't be a problem with basar b'challah. If it's kosher species meat that wasn't shechted, like for example, cow's meat that was just it was killed. The animal was stunned. It was just shot. So then it's a machlokes. There are people that are lenient, but under ordinary circumstances, we would be machmir, we would be stringent to say one should avoid doing that because of the concern of basar b'challah. So if you see dog food that has meat and milk, it's very possible it's coming from kosher species meat. It's not shechted meat, but it's better to avoid for that reason. One should really avoid it. I think I told you the story about the prison the week and a half ago, right? So there, this prisoner Nebuch didn't have any choice. We found him a heter based on that opinion that's lenient to be able to take the prison food and swap it out with a non-Jew to get kosher snacks in exchange. But that's not something we would ordinarily tell someone to do under ordinary circumstances where other choices are available. Okay, halacha gimel, getting to the concept of b'liyah shalei b'derech bishul, which refers to halacha says and delineates. It says there are certain times and certain situations where we can have an absorption, even without the medium of cooking. So, for example, if I put, let's say, a piece of meat and I soak it in milk for 24 hours or for a while, that also could be an absorption issue. Or if I soak, just in general, when you soak something for 24 hours, halacha says there's a concept known as kavash k'mavushal. When I soak something undisturbed and leave it in a vessel for 24 hours, after 24 hours, there will be an absorption into the walls of the vessel. There's a certain permeation that happens. Let's look at that now. Halacha gimel. This that the Torah says, it uses the term cooking, don't cook a kid goat in its mother's milk. It teaches us that the Torah only prohibits bas b'chol in the form of a way of cooking. That means that the milk and the meat were cooked together. However, what happens if they were not actually cooked together? If one just soaked the basar, the meat and the milk together, even though certainly there will be an exchange, meaning some of the milk will be permeated into the meat and vice versa. And the taste of meat will go into the milk. The general rule is as follows. As long as they were not cooked together, there's no isum min hatayr. Omnam asr min rabbanon, the rabbis prohibited kol basar shenivla b'teichei cholav, any meat that has any milk absorbed, v'chein cholav shekol aton basar. So rabbinically, any meat that has a taste of milk in it, and any milk that has a taste of meat in it, is rabbinically prohibited. So therefore, if you take a piece of meat and you soak it in milk, rabbinically it'll be prohibited. You have a situation where some meat fell into milk or milk fell into meat. How to navigate that situation. Now, halacha Daled kind of ties up all the loose ends of these halachas and sums it up very, very nicely in a tidy way. So that we learn out from here. From the Torah, only when you have meat that was shechted, according to all opinions, that's from a kosher species, right? So let's say cow's meat, but a shechted that's cooked together with kosher milk, that's possible called minatayr. Midrabanan rabbinically, also gam basar oif tahor. They said you're also not allowed to cook chicken, or basar chaya tahira, or kosher meat from a wild animal with milk. V'chein chalav chaya tahira in basar, and similar milk from a kosher wild animal cannot be cooked with meat. Or even if they just gave taste to one another, that's prohibited rabbinically. It's also rabbinically prohibited to cook chicken or meat from a kosher wild animal or non-kosher species meat. For example, pig's meat or horse meat with milk would be prohibited to cook midrabanan because it looks like vas b'cholov. It's maris ayin. It's an act that does not look right. I told you the joke about the restaurant last week. I don't remember my jokes. You know my jokes? No. So there's this convent sitting in a non-kosher restaurant. He's eating treif, and the rabbi is standing outside the window, looking. After he's done, comes out. The rabbi says to the convent, like, "What are you doing over here?" He says to the rabbi with a straight face, says, "Rabbi, what's the problem? It's been under rabbinical supervision since I got here." The rabbi is watching the whole time. But it's not allowed because of the problem of maris ayin. Another joke there. Someone comes into a restaurant, not certified kosher. The person behind the counter doesn't look particularly religious, but behind him is a picture of a very distinguished looking rabbi with a long white beard. He says, "You can eat here. This is my grandfather." Picture of my grandfather. The guy says, "If I saw your grandfather by the counter and I saw your picture on the wall, I'd consider it." Anyway, okay. Now, halacha hey. Now, chokes. There's another thing I want to introduce to you as follows. Chokes means there are certain behaviors. Now we're going to get into a little bit of psychology, if you will, which means to say the Torah says that we cannot do certain behaviors that can lead us to make a mistake. So the behavior itself could be a permissible behavior, but because this behavior could lead us to a mistake, it becomes a non-permissible behavior. So this is an example of a rabbinic enactment, but it was established in order to safeguard the environment that's going to prevent possible cholov. So before I actually give you the exact example here, let's say two of you girls are going on a trip and you meet at a park bench, and one of you are having a fleishiga meal, and one of you are having a dairy meal, and you know each other from class or from school, or from the dorm. And therefore, you're considered to be casual friends, at least, and maybe even good friends, right? So therefore, there's a heightened sense of concern. You might come to share food with each other. When in a sense, you'd be like, "Oh, I just bought this burger. It's delicious. Try some." You cut off a piece. It could happen. When it comes to a complete stranger that you don't know, if you offer them food, they'll call the police on it. It's not happening. Don't worry. But if it's somebody that you know, there is such a concern. So the rabbi said, when you have a situation where you're sitting at the same table, somebody and that people that know each other, you know each other, there's a heightened sense of concern. You might come to share food. Therefore, you have to put down what's known as a heka. You have to put down some kind of a reminder, like, okay, we can sit together, we can have our food, you can have your dairy, I can have my meat, but we're not getting too close here because we cannot share food. We're eating different status foods. So that's an example where the rabbi said we need to have a bit of a reminder, a buffer, a safeguard. Yeah.
What would count as a reminder? Like one person has a red placemat, the other has a blue, or?
Okay, so if you have a placemat that's designated, one for dairy, one for meat, that would be a good reminder. And alternatively, if you put something in between them, you need a placemat anyways, because you have separate foods. But if you put down something and then you put something in between you that's at least an inch high. When it comes to a hecker, you look for something that's over an inch high, that's not ordinarily on the table. Only on the table when you're having that activity. That would be considered a valid reminder. So, for example, a tennis ball, which doesn't belong on a table, would be a good reminder. But a napkin holder, which is always on the table, is not really a reminder. But if you have a napkin holder that's always on the table, it's clear. But whenever you're eating together, one's eating meat, one's eating dairy, you bring down the blue napkin holder, and that also is a hecker because it's something that's only for that time. Let's look at it inside. Halacha hey. It goes with Chazal. The rabbis also made an additional prohibition. You're not allowed to eat meat the same table as dairy when someone else is there. The two of you cannot eat together. You're not allowed to take meat and put it on a table that someone's having dairy. And the same would be in the reverse. Not to bring cheese on a table if someone's eating meat. Even if we're sitting on opposite ends of the table. That's by one person. So when we have, for example, a meat meal, we cannot put dairy on the table because again, it's going to create it's a stumbling block. But even if it's two separate people, this one has their cheese Danish, and this one has their hamburger. Yes, separate people. Still, in Makirim Zeh, I'll take the question at the end of the halacha, please. If we know each other, there's a sense of familiarity, right? You're not strangers. The rabbis were concerned. We're concerned that maybe you're going to share food with each other because out of kindness, out of generosity, out of benevolence. You have to try this burger. It's the unbelievable burger. They charge me $29.99. I can understand why. They convinced you. Whatever, right? So that could happen. However, if it's let's say you meet a girl from Beis Rochel in Williamsburg in South America, she's sitting at the same table. You don't know her from Adam. I mean, you're both Jewish women and everything, but you don't know her. Then we're not afraid you're going to offer her your food because she'll call the police on you. I'm kidding, but no, it's not socially acceptable to do that. First, you have to get to know the person. Hello, who are you? You know, there's many steps that have to happen before you say, you want some of my food. So it's not happening right now. Now, what do you do if you do know each other? How do you get around the problem? What can you do to alleviate this concern? So there's something that can be done. And also, they made some sort of a reminder, a recognition to remind themselves, hey, okay, friends, we're going to sit together, but we're not sharing food now. As you said, everyone's has their own designated placemats with colors that are designated for one's for meat and one's for milk. That's also good. The designated specifically for meat or milk. Or you put something in between you that's not ordinarily on the table as a simon. You put down a tennis ball. Or you put down a piece of Lego that's more than an inch high, or anything, as long as it's not something that's ordinarily on the table. So the poskim say Gavoya Katsas, slightly high, that the eye is going to catch it, should be at least an inch high. Bless you. In such a fashion, people are going to be careful not to share food. We have to be a little more careful. But you also have to be careful, be mindful, be cognizant, not to drink from the same cup, not to eat from the same bread, because there could be some, you're eating, let's say, a fatty piece of meat, that some of the residue could be on your fingers, you touch the bread, you have to be careful that you shouldn't use that bread for dairy. Even someone's having, let's say, someone's having a chicken sandwich, and then her friend's having a dairy cheese sandwich. So even though it's only rabbinic because it's basarayf, it's just chicken. You still have to have all these safeguards, which creates a very fascinating phenomenon, which I'm going to touch on in a moment. Even though basar b'chalav of chicken and milk is only rabbinic itself, so we have a rabbinic prohibition against a rabbinic prohibition, right? Rabbinic prohibition is, hey, we can't share food. Why? Because we're afraid you might come to share food, which would be only rabbinic prohibition because it's not actual meat; it's just chicken. But the answer is that Chazal, when the rabbis made this tikkun, they made everything equal, uniformity, and like Menatayda. So that's the way the halacha is. Any questions on what we said so far? No. Any question about it?
Is it like if everyone's eating, like let's say downstairs a dairy meal and you have dairy allergy, And there isn't anything that, like, everything normally goes on the table. Like, books are normally on the table, anything that you might put on the table is normal. Should you sit separately
Why, what are you having?
if you're having
Meat?
a chicken sandwich or chicken tenders?
So then you should put down some kind of a reminder, some kind of a hecker, put down a placemat just for yourself.
Do we- Like, on the table here, literally everything goes on the table.
Right, so if you put down a placemat under your food, that's a meat placemat, then you're safe.
Would like a plate suffice?
So take another plate and then put down a hecker, put down something as a reminder between you and your friends. Because a plate is not something that's miyucha dafka for meat. So the plate can serve as a buffer that shouldn't be hot food out of another plate table, but as a hecker, you need something else as a hecker. Now, the next halacha, which is vav, we're going in gradual stages over here. We're peeling layers of the onions. Now, can I have dairy food after meat, or how much time must I wait? Right? There's also, so we spoke about, okay, we cannot eat meat and milk together. We cannot have them at the same table, even if separate people. We have to have safeguards. We spoke all about that now. Now we're saying, okay, fine. I'm not going to have them together, but do I have to wait after eating meat? We wait, right? So we're going to talk about the various customs and the accepted custom, and how much time is waited after dairy before having meat, which is a shorter waiting period. So the dairy digests much quicker. Very interesting. There's a mimer somewhere. I think I heard it from the middle of it. I didn't see the mimer inside. I'm just going to quote you some sketches of the mimer, but it's fascinating. The Rebbe explains that meat, which you have the blood in the meat, is gevura. First to gevura, severity. And by severity, before you mix it with milk, meaning before you introduce milk, you have to make sure it's digested very, very thoroughly. So you don't overpower the white, which is color, which refers to chesed, overpower the chesed, the gevura, to not overpower the chesed. That's why you have to wait 6 hours for digestion of meat. Whereas when it comes to chesed, when you have the milk, our meaning is to wait an hour based on the Shalach, because it's cholad, it's chesed, and there isn't that concern about it's overpowering the water, so to speak. So it's just an interesting dynamic of how that plays out. Okay. Halacha vat. Achilas mechol echol v'achad basa lezu b'vachi and lechol basa yachad im chol. Not only should we not eat meat together with milk, ela sheisifu ligzer shlilecha machol echol. They also made an additional prohibition. You're not allowed to have a dairy food. Afila achash agom lechol basa. Even after you had your steak, you had your delicious steak dinner. You cannot have ice cream for dessert if it's dairy. Possible. Right? Now we're going to quote from the Gemara in Chulin. You ate meat, you're not allowed to have any dairy. The Gemara says cheese, but it means any dairy. The Gemara explains there, when he had meat in this meal, he did not have any dairy food, any cheese, until another meal started. The Rishonim, the commentaries on the Gemara, have a dispute how to understand the implications of this Gemara statement. How do we define the word Suda Acheres? Suda Acheres literally means another meal. So, there's an additional machlekes as to why we have to wait between meat and milk as well. We're going to get to this machlekes in a minute, but I want to just explain for a moment. In the times of the Gemara, people used to wait 6 hours between meals. So, according to one way of interpreting Suda Acheres, it means bisman Suda Acheres, the time it takes between another meal, from this meal to another meal, which is 6 hours. Hence the waiting of the 6 hour period. And so we're going to, in Halacha Zayin, we're going to get into more details of this. Yesh Mefarshim. Now we're going to delineate the two opinions here. How we understand and interpret the Gemara that says, "Achal basar le'achal gvina atzuda acheres." You cannot have any dairy until another meal happens. What does that mean? We have to understand the Gemara. So Yesh Mefarshim, there are those that explain Kisud that is Hainu Shir Hasman Shebeitzul L'Suda. The amount of time that has to lapse, that has to be to pass between one meal and the next meal. So now we're going to apply this. You have meat, don't have any dairy food, until you pass by the regular time, the times of Chazal, the Suda said between the afternoon meal and the night meal. That is complete, there's a complete 6 hours. There are those that differ and they say no. When the Gemara says another meal, the explanation is you're not allowed to eat milk and meat in one meal itself. So if you finish eating your meat meal, then you're allowed, technically would be allowed to have dairy right afterwards. You would be allowed to have your ice cream, according to the second opinion. Don't try it at home. You don't follow it. The Pishi Tosam, even according to this opinion, that's very lenient. You for sure have to bench because you're never allowed to have basar and cholov in the same suda. So that's why on Shavuos, when we have a dairy meal, we have to bench before we have another fleshik meal later. Okay, you have to bench. Siluk suda means benching either b'chas hamazon if you're washed or alamichya if it's mezainis, right? You know, the after bracha is considered siluk suda. I sealed that that parsha. I'm finished with that meal. If you didn't have any bread, that's called Gemar Suda. I'm giving you a lot of information now. You'll have to forgive me, but I'm going to make sure we unpack it. There's another halacha that says you also have to rinse your mouth before going to dairy after eating meat to make sure there's no residue of meat pieces inside and the nooks and the crannies and the cavity of the mouth. Yes, the dentist can tell you all about it. And also to rinse your mouth. So you eat a food. Let's say you eat a carrot or eat an apple to wash out the innards of all the teeth on the gums, and then you also wash. So you drink something else, a liquid, to wash everything down. No, that's after eating the meat. Could be within the 6 hours. We still wait 6 hours, but you just rinse sometime in between during that 6 hour period, which most of the time you're going to snack anyways, usually. And, people would eat something within a 6 hour period. By the way, foods that count as a cleansing food, there are exclusions to this, by the way. Popcorn is not a good cleansing food because it gets stuck in the teeth. Peanut butter would not work either. But most foods would work because they kind of flush everything out. Even according to this opinion that says you don't have to wait a full 6 hours, right? So now we see they said that you have to wait at least 1 hour between eating meat and then having dairy. Now that we laid out the difference of opinion, now we have to go and say, okay, so what do we actually do in our day-to-day life? What do we follow? That gets into Halacha Ches. And then I have a story for you. The custom when it comes to waiting after eating meat before having dairy. The Sfardim took on the opinion that says you have to wait complete 6 hours. The Ashkenaz refers to actually, though, the German Jews, the rest of the world holds 6 hours also, like us, we just about hold 6 hours. The German Jews, they took the second opinion. It's enough to wait till another meal starts. And then you get into a discussion. Does that mean 1 hour or 3 hours? The custom of waiting the full 6 hours was spread forth in almost all Jewish communities unanimously. Even by the Ashkenazi community. The poskim write, this is befitting a beautiful poetic expression. Anybody who has the fragrance of Torah inside of them should wait the full 6 hours. There are places in the German community, they never accepted this custom of waiting 6 hours. And they continue on with the traditions of their generations for generations and generations of waiting 1 hour. There are those that wait 3 hours. For them, it's enough because that's their custom that they have. But someone who's an Ashkenazi Jew, whose custom is to wait the full 6 hours, they should not, God forbid, change their custom, because the custom takes on the strength, and to be put together. They break the boundary, to breach the boundaries of it. And someone who does do that, they're violating the expression, don't forsake the Torah of your mother. Why the Torah of your mother? Because the oral Torah is called the Torah of your mother. The minhag, the custom is the Torah of your mother. Don't forsake that. Make sure to keep it. So again, if someone has the custom of waiting the full 6 hours, they have to. They have a custom that they from the like German Jews or Dutch Jews, if they wait only 1 hour, 3 hours, that's their custom. But as I said before, most people wait the full 6 hours. Now it's story time. Yes, go ahead. You wait the 6 hours, yeah. You don't have a custom otherwise, then you wait like everybody else 6 hours, yeah. Well, where's your family from? If that's been their custom, then that's valid for them. But I'm sorry? Yes, if that's been the custom, you're allowed to continue with it. But but as long as it's been, that's been the tradition, so to speak, in the generation. Once someone gets married, then the customs will go like the husband in terms of what to do. Now, I'll tell you a story about this. In this discussion itself, there's another segment which I wanted to touch on as well. So we said that those that wait 6 hours wait the full 6 hours. There's an opinion that says you wait 6 hours, but not the full 6 hours. You wait into the 6th hour, which means 5.5 plus 5 hours and 31 minutes. And I believe that Sanzer, even Chassidim, but Sanzer Chassidim hold like that. And the Rambam writes a Lashon when it comes to these halachas in the Sefer Dusha. In the segment of halachas by Cholas Asura, it's the Rambam writes a Lashon like 6 hours. Kind of leads a little bit of a hint to this opinion, but we don't follow this. The Rebbe said in the Sikha, a Lashon, a Chassidish Yid is there to start 6 shoy shleimus. Chassidish Yid is somebody who waits the full 6 hours. And now I'm going to tell you a story. There was a Chassidish Rav who had eaten fleishiks and was already 5 hours and 31 minutes past the time he had fleishiks. And he was going to have a dairy coffee because based on this opinion, it says it's into the 6th hour. And he's writing a response, detailed response with all the opinions and the sources, why it's valid to hold like this. And he's writing the response, and through the stroke of the pen, he knocked over his coffee, and it soiled the whole response. It got all the coffee, and it got all soiled. And he said, he said, it's a simon milamaila, they shouldn't write this shulchan. He didn't, it wasn't in the Now I'll tell you another story. See, when I open up the filing cabinet of the stories, more files come out. When I was in yeshiva, I was sitting on the stoop outside of yeshiva. And when I grew up out of town, sitting the whole day till 9:30, it was a big adjustment. When I was older. Anyway, so I was sitting getting fresh air. And the mashpia walks out of the tzvivel with my mashpia, blessed memories, holy man, sweet man. Really loved the Bachman. I feel his love this very day. He tells me this story. He said there was a Chassidish Rebbe. He was learning Gemara, and he had a cold. He was heiserik in Yiddish. He had a cold. He wasn't feeling well. As in the middle of learning a Taisus, he was deeply engrossed. His son comes over to him and says in Yiddish, "Tatich kemacha parecha kol steak." I make you a glass of tea, to warm you up and to help you. So the father kind of dismissed his son and said, "In Atzilus, Atzilus refers to the celestial worlds of Atzilus." He was like in the middle of deep Torah thoughts. He says, "In Atzilus, we don't drink tea." The son says to the father, in Atzilus, you don't get a cold. Okay, yeah. Tell you another story. Let me try to learn another halacha if I don't tell you another story after that one. But the Rebbetzin said, Reb Chaim Mushka said in the name of her father, the Piyut Rebbe, you ask somebody how they're doing, you say Baruch Hashem. She said, Noch the Baruch Hashem, after the Baruch Hashem, Daf and Rebbe Sulik, and you have to add something. Baruch Hashem good, Baruch Hashem not so good, but you know, everything you have to thank Hashem for everything, but doesn't mean that things are necessarily going easy for you. So my father had a story with the Rebbe like that. Father was one of the founders of the Pegisha Shabbatons they have. This must have been in the 70s. So they were davening Ma'ariv upstairs at 770. Pegisha started in 1962, 63. My father was the founder. Yeah. Was the founder. And I'll tell you something even further. I'll tell you a story within a story. Like when I was 19 years old, a few years ago, a couple of years ago, my father said to me, there was a whole Pegisha procession. My father said to me, my father would go in the front. My father was a very humble person. He said to me, I'm going to introduce you to the Rebbe. I wanted to sink into the floor. I wanted to feel. I was scared. I said to my father, the Rebbe knows everybody. The Rebbe's a tzaddik. No, I want you to the Rebbe. I couldn't let my father down. So I'm standing behind my father in the line. There's like 150 people behind us. My father gets $2 from the Rebbe. Then my father points to me and says to the Rebbe, this is my son Yitzchak. The Rebbe gives me $1. Then the Rebbe gives me another $1 and says, may you follow in your father's footsteps. I walked away from the Rebbe's holy presence, awestruck. And then the family we have humor kind of in the family blood. So I said to my father, with a twinkle, I said, you think the Rebbe wants me to become a scientist? My father was a scientist. The Rebbe wants you to continue this work of Fatzah. So my teaching in Makom Hadas is in the spirit of that from the Rebbe. But the Rebbe told me to continue like my father. Anyway, so you asked the question. The Gisha began like 1962 at the Rebbe's behest. My father was the founder, together with Rabbi Elul, live and be well. So anyway, so in the 1970s, the Rebbe asked my father, how was the Pegisha, the Matzah Shabbos, with Shabbos Pegisha? My father answered the Rebbe very, very succinctly, Baruch Hashem. And the Rebbe responded to my father, Baruch Hashem good or Baruch Hashem not so good. That's the two-leg in Ephes. You have to add something for that. Tell you another story. See, I knew it after once they came to know. Today, there's a Friday, 2 weeks ago from today, was the 45th yahrzeit of the previous Satmar Rebbe. His name was Rabbi Yerlish, a very wise man. He sent people to the Rebbe. He was a tzaddik. When people needed a bracha for children, he said, for this, sometimes he would say, for this you have to go to Lubavitch Rebbe. Like he had a real respect for the Rebbe. And parenthetically, he was older than the Rebbe, by the way. Unfortunately, Rabbi Yerlish, he lost a daughter at a very young age. So in 1952, he was sitting shiva for his daughter. So the Rebbe was a young Rebbe then. He went to be Menachem Avol. And the Rebbe was 52. And the older Chassidim went with the Rebbe. The Samar Chassidim didn't know the Rebbe. They thought that the Rebbe was the Gabbai and the older Chassidim was the Rebbe. They didn't understand the dynamics. But he was very close with it. He had respect for the Rebbe. Anyway, the Yerlish, someone came over to him and said to him, his name was Yoel. Yoel's gematria numerical value of 47. They said to him, Rebbe, I want to give tzedakah in the gematria of the Rebbe's name. To help some of the institutions. So Rabbi Yerlish says to the Yid with a smile, he says, in the world they call me Yerlish. And another shin has another 300 to the number. So instead of 47, it's $347. Anyway, okay. Yeah, another story. I'll tell you one more story. Maybe another one after that also. But Chodesh Elul, the Halacha Baditchever, you heard of the Baditchever, I'm sure. The Halacha Baditchever is a Machotin, the grandchildren, and his grandchild, my brother's grandchild, married the Patanim. The Halacha Baditchever, he would always find something positive to say about the Yid. And there was a Yid that was wearing his talis and tefillin, and he was greasing the wheels of his wagon. All kinds of tar and all kinds of gooky things there. And he said, Rebbeinu Shalom, Master of the universe, look at your people, even when they're greasing their wagon wheels, They're thinking of you. Rabbi Ditchever, the last year of his life, he saw Baruch HaKodesh that his time was up in this world. And he said to the Eibishter, Rebbeinu Shalom, give me another Rosh Hashanah, another Aseret Yemei Tshuva, another Yom Kippurim, another Sukkos, another Yishana Rabbah, another Shmini Atzeres, another Simchas Torah. And Rabbi Ditchever was Nifter Chof Hei Tishrei, the day after Yisro Chag. Now I'm going to tell you another story. On Chavdal, the day before, Chavdal Tishrei is the yahrzeit of the Heilige Ribnitzer. The Ribnitzer Rebbe, he lived, I saw him. He was contemporary. He passed away in the, I believe, the late 80s. He was a Bach, I saw him. The holy man. He lived to like 96. He was in Moyle. He performed thousands of brisim in Russia. He was close with the Rebbe. And he was a very unusual person. He led a very fascinating type of life. He lived in many, many cities. He davened in all hours of the day. And he had very, very lofty customs. And Mam Shabbat Baruch HaKodesh, missing all the works. A lot of the Yidden from Hungary and other Chassidim would go to him for brachas. He lived in Seagate for a certain period of time. And Mordechai Ben David, the singer, was his gabbai, was his mishamish. So one time, a year, it's a story within a story, I'll just tell you the background of the story. I was flying on an airplane to Florida. The year I was saying college from my mother, my father's doctor, my father had a difficult year. My father's father lived, I think, a very long life, lived till 97. And then 6 months later, my mother passed away at a younger age. My father, went through a job change. His doctor said, you went through a very difficult year, go on a vacation. So during the year of Kaddish for my mother, my father took my brother and I on a kosher cruise. We had a minion, we said Kaddish. Anyways, I'm flying to Florida to get down to the cruise. Never mind, it was nice to get away. And I'm sitting next to Mordechai Ben David, and I love stories. So I grilled him, whatever he knows. He's trying to, basically I got whatever I can out of him. Because I knew he was the gabbai of the Ribnitzer. He tells me this story. He says, the Ribnitzer tells him, this is in the 80s. Great Adventures has a safari. Today, the wild animals like the lions and tigers, they don't run loose in cages. But in those days, they ran loose. I went, as a kid, I went on the safari like that. You don't open the windows, obviously. So he says, the Ribnitzer tells him, Kim Lomagin Zendachai, let's go see the wild animals. We know Picabella, the lion and the tiger, they represent things. Pnei Asher, etc. So they're in the Great Adventures, and the Ribnitzer, Mordechai Ben David, I believe he had a Lincoln Continental that was driving the car. The Ribnitzer is sitting in the back seat, and he tells Mordechai Ben David, stop the car. Stops the car. And there's a lion outside, about 20 feet away, staring at the car. So the Ribnitzer opens the window of the car, and he's staring at the lion. And we know that even an animal, even a dangerous animal, when it sees the face of a tzaddik, it would never do any harm. Because it sees the Tzelem Eliki, would never do anything to him. The lion is sitting there very docile, watching the Ribnitzer. And the rangers came running, shut them, get out of here, you can't do this. So that's what happens. I was there, that's what happened. Many other stories of the Ribnitzer. He was very careful. I saw the Ribnitzer once. He would only shake hands with somebody who went to mikveh that day. He wouldn't shake their hands otherwise. So there was a chassan, he lived in Eretz Yisrael also, one of the chassan in Tel Aviv. The Ribnitzer was there. The drummer had not yet come to mikveh. They tried to shake his hand with the Ribnitzer. The Ribnitzer didn't give him the hand. I mean, not in an embarrassing way. He just held his hand like this, and he would greet him, but he wouldn't go. And then by the chuppah, the drummer had time to run to the ocean, and he toibled. Came back. Didn't tell anybody. Then he gave the hand again, and then the Ribnitzer gave him the hand. He saw Baruch HaKodesh, he saw. There's another story with the bris. He told me that the Ribnitzer was a mayor, and the Mendel Futterfass and the Ribnitzer were very close. So they did a plan. They used to do the bris in secret. They had to do them secretly and all these things. So there was a woman who had she was Jewish. She had a son. Her husband was like an officer in the army, non-Jewish. So she wanted to perform a bris on her son, but she had to do it in a secretive way. So the Ribnitzer came with Reb Mendel. They made a secret bris. And Reb Mendel was the sandik. He's holding the baby. And the Ribnitzer is doing the bris. In the middle of the bris, the baby turns purple, or it looks like, God forbid, the baby's like, the shama is going up, and the Mendel's word, the Rebitzer is calm as can be, no concern. And then at the end of the bris, the minhag is you take pinky, and you dip it into the wine, and you give it to the mouth of the baby. You say, "V'aymalach v'damayich hayim." You say to that this blood you shall live, and he did it, said it twice, and then all of a sudden the complexion of the baby returns back to normal. After the bris was over, the Mendel says to the Rebitzer, says, "Wie nennt man achrayus of a Yiddish kinderle? How do you take responsibility in a Jewish soul, a person's life like that?" So the Rebbitzer's response was, "As Eliyahu Anovi steht b'yamina, Eliyahu Anovi comes to every bris. He's standing right next to me. What could go wrong? What are you worried about?" There's another story with it. The Rebbitzer's also used to table in the ice to break the ice. There's many stories. There's a story also. The Rebbitzer's didn't have any children of his own, and he lived a very long life. So he remarried after his wife passed away. He remarried a woman with two sons. So he had two stepsons, I believe. So she came to the Rebbe for dollars, get a bracha from the Rebbe. And at that time, there was a Yid that needed help. So I believe the way I understand the story is that in Eilam HaMachshava, in the world of thought, it's that they can communicate with each other. They know what each other are thinking. So the Rebbe told the Rebbe, tell your husband thank you for helping out this and this Jew with whatever issue they needed help with. The Rebbe was helping them. Yeah, the Rebbetzer's caver is buried in Muncie. But you should know one more thing. We're stopping here by Halacha. Yeah, by Halacha test. One more thing I want to tell you that even today, even to this day and age, there are Yidden that have Ruach HaKodesh. There are people that are so refined. My secretary, she was work for me anymore, but she was Satmar community. I'm going to check on my kids, so I'll call you back. I could say it next week if you want. I can say it now.
Now.
Now? Okay, so let's see. Basically, it's a short story. So her dad was a very holy Jew. Anyway, so her husband used to run the 8:30 minyan on Sunday morning in the shore. And he was thinking that, it's too hard for him schedule-wise. He cannot take this responsibility anymore. And this is what's going through his thoughts. He didn't tell anybody. On Friday night, people would go up to the shore and say Shabbos to the Rav. And her husband's turn comes to the Rav. He says Shabbos to the Rav. The Rav tells him, continue on with your holy work of taking care of the minyan on Sunday morning. He read his thoughts. Happened like a year ago. The Rav already passed away. Anyway, okay, Shabbos. And Mitzvah Shem, we'll try to learn something next. In the story, who knows?